Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another installment of The Wave Show. My name is the one and only, aka Frenchie, and I'm your host. Today we have in studio the lovely Tamara. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How
Great.
are you?
I'm doing very, very, very well.
Awesome.
So, you're a therapist and life coach, is that correct?
Yeah, something like that. Mm-hmm.
And how do you like that field?
I think it's an ever-growing field, in the sense where I'm always learning, and I think that's one of the things that I enjoy the most. It's as much as my clients see me as the expert, they're really the expert in terms of what they're going through, and they know it best. So I think that's one thing that I enjoy the most, is just constantly learning and seeing how things that I know apply in real life, because we always know there's a difference between theory and application.
So you actually like your job, you actually like helping people?
Yes. Yeah.
It's of you.
You know, just a little bit.
So quick question. What group do you see, like in terms of like cultural group, which group do you see the most?
It's interesting because I used to work with an agency that serviced predominantly African and Caribbean community, my community, Tropicana Community Services. So when I was there, I just saw my people. So I see interracial couples, and so you'll see how biracial children have a unique experience of their oppression.
Yeah. So it's basically like black and white, or like what, Asians, or
mostly black and white. I haven't seen from other race, mainly black and white. Yeah. Okay.
The reason why I asked that is because I find that there's a lot of cultures that are open for help when it comes to therapy, and then there's some groups like our group that may not be too therapy friendly. So it's always good to see that. I think times are evolving.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Because I guess when it comes to when we're going through situations in life and we need help, it's either what you're gonna stomach it and what, I'm just gonna endure this pain all by myself, or I'm actually gonna reach out and seek help. So it's good to see that there's more black people coming forward. That's a stigma in our culture as well too, right?
Huge.
I find that a lot of black people may not. I'm not speaking for all of them, but for the most part, I find that a lot of them struggle with actually asking for help when it comes to.
I think one of the hardest part in general is just reaching out, period.
Right.
Regardless of the ethnic group, I just know from what I've seen, and kind of segueing back to what you had asked me about, if I work with, if I usually work with people who are only one kind of clientele, but what I've noticed across the board is reaching out for help is by far the hardest thing, regardless of background. Right. Even acknowledging that something is wrong or something is a bit debilitating, that's the hardest part. And then doing it. So first you got to realize that, okay, something is off here and I don't know what, and I can't seem to find a way to fill whatever void I might be feeling, or whatever they might be feeling. But then the next piece is moving forward. Okay, now I know something is wrong. So that acknowledgement piece is huge. And then the next hard part is like, okay, something is wrong, can you help me? It's always, people are more receptive to, do you want me to go pick this up, as opposed to, can you pick this up for me? People are way more receptive to that. So, a lot of what I do is just, I think what therapy does is it provides insight to a situation, and it helps with understanding of what's going on.
For those who want to receive it,
For those who want to receive it. But therapy comes in many ways, right? So people always think it's the one-on-one, but it can be group therapy, it can be family therapy, it can be video therapy, it can be telephone therapy, it can be text.
Oh, right on.
So there's a lot of ways, and especially with technology taking over, there's a lot of ways to administer that support.
Right on. And in terms of the younger generation, what are the challenges you find working with the younger generation? What I mean younger generation, let's just say, I don't want to say teeny boppers, but teenagers and young adolescents. What are the challenges working with them?
I think what I keep hearing is just anxiety is taking over. Just worried about what people think and feel about you is paramount.
And why do you think that is?
I think because I've been trying to understand that too, why is this particular, but kind of the pieces I've kind of put together, maybe this seems like this could work, is because technology is so accessible and people are able to access so much information.
Right.
And then social media also presenting, you know, a false reality.
Right.
Very much people are always kind of like, I want to be like that, and everything is goals, 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 goals. And it's all happiness and sunshine and rainbows, but no one shows, like, you know, the rough times, the hard times, the self-doubt times, those.
It's kind of like on Instagram, right? Yeah. People always show the good things, look at me, I'm at the gym, I'm working out, but they're never showing the downtime, right?
Right.
Hair is always proper, the house is always clean.
Everything.
Never showing the downtime in terms of bad things that happen. So.
Exactly. And so because there's this false sense of reality and like, oh, how come she's always like that? I want to be like that.
Right.
And then they start to, you know, that voice in your head is like, why can't you be like that? You should be able to do like that. She looks just like you. Why can't you do this? Right. Or what are your friends going to think if you're not doing this and living up to their expectations?
And that's a lot of pressure.
And it's always happening. Wi-Fi is everywhere, so you can have access to internet anywhere, everywhere, all the time, today, tomorrow, forever. And so it's just constantly going. So it becomes tiring. It's mentally, and
everybody's really going for that dopamine rush too, eh?
Right, and everyone wants to feel happy and live happy, but the reality is it takes much more. Like, you really have to be mindful of the images that you allow to determine what happiness is, right? Not everyone's happiness is the same, and I think there's like a box around happiness, and it's like, if you don't fit into this box of happiness, you're not happy.
It's like everybody wants to download the right type of happiness, and there's no exactly precise right happiness to download.
Exactly.
Like, I hear a lot in urban, like in urban culture, secure the bag, secure the bag. We are the bag. What's your breakdown of that, and how do we get to secure that bag in terms of our mental health? Because when people say secure the bag, a lot of it's like, okay, yeah, I got me 10 bands, or I got me a band, I'm getting that bag. But in essence, the bag is you, yourself. Right. You know, mind, body, and soul, right? Yep. And how do you break it? How do you break that down to people so they can understand it's not exactly the Louis Vuitton bag, or it's not even the Gucci shoes. The bag is yourself. Well,
I'll have what I think is a stereotypical answer for a life coach and therapist is power. Knowledge is power. Learning about yourself. So knowledge doesn't always mean externally and getting that information externally. Sometimes it's looking internally and trying to figure out, okay, what makes me happy? What makes me tick? What's my understanding of love? What's my understanding of relationships? Where did I learn these ideas from? So it's just really trying to figure out, okay, why do I feel this way? And is there things around me that kind of reinforce this way of thinking? Or am I being unrealistic in terms of my goals? Because sometimes we set those really high standards, but it's like you don't even have the resources to do that, so you're being unfair to yourself.
I think society sets a lot of those standards as well too, right?
Right, so it's a complex, and it's layering, right? And then everyone kind of feels like crabs in a bucket trying to figure it out, and oh, they got it, so let me step on them to see if I can get it, and then it's not helpful, right? There's not enough people supporting each other, and I think it happens the most, I see it the most in my community. Like, there's not enough support, but one of the things that I really enjoy seeing now is that there's more of us conscious of this, and more of us are trying to do different, trying to disrupt that cycle or that generational cycle of thinking, right?
We're in that era of being woke, right? Now. A lot of people are waking up right now, and they're realizing that, hey, you know what? This is what I need to do versus what I was doing.
Right. So we're learning from our mistakes, right? Or we're learning from experience, I'll say. Because I wouldn't say mistakes are a thing. I think you learn from your experience and then you kind of move forward from that. Because nothing's really a mistake.
That's great. Well, yeah, it's true. Nothing is a mistake. Basically, every mistake is... I believe in mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. And I think mistakes are good because when they happen, it kind of slows us down. To see the bigger picture. It's like when Kanye West wrote that song, where he sang that song, Drive Slow, Homie. Yeah. You know, everybody's driving so fast, they don't really get to see exactly what's going on in life.
Right, and they miss those lessons.
Exactly that. So, like, no, that's... So, in terms of, like, what's the youngest group that you deal with that you find a little bit more challenging? Or the youngest group where you think it's a little bit more challenging to get through to them? Based on your experience.
I don't think there's a particular age group that's necessarily hard to get through to. I think it's more so just trying to understand what happened to lead them to this current circumstance that they're in. I think kids are where they're at because of our own intergenerational traumas that we haven't had the chance to deal with, and then we pass it on to our kids. And because we have a hard time going to that place and healing ourselves, when it manifests in our children, because our children become like, you know, small versions of ourselves, we're unable to kind of go to that step and get them through it because we've never dealt with it. So how do you teach someone to deal with something that you've never dealt with? So I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned, is that we all have a story. And I don't think it's realistic to say we're all going to heal from our stories and propel forward and be awesome and da-da-da-da. I think it's more realistic to say be aware of your story and how that impacts the people around you.
So I guess a lot of people compare their stories to others, right?
And that's part of the anxiety piece, right? With the young people constantly saying, oh, well, they look like me. How come they were able to do this and I can't? So then it feeds into that self-doubt and like, oh, I'm not good enough. See, I'm not good enough. See, I'm not good enough. So
I think everybody starts the race differently.
Yeah.
Like I believe that, you know, everybody starts the race at different times. Like if you're coming from a household where you have a mother and father, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to bloom a little bit better than somebody that grew up in what we call like a broken home. You can grow up with a mother and father and both of them are absent, right? So like within your experience, and like just for actually I should say my question to you should be, what's the difference between a therapist and a psychologist? Because it seems borderline very, very close with the work that you do, right?
Very, very close. Psychologists and a therapist, I think they're one and the same, so they're interchangeable. That's how I've understood it. A psychologist, their line of training is just a little bit different, whereas I'll say my background is social work, so I have my master's in social work, so our type of training is interdisciplinary. So we get a little bit of everything and it kind of makes it into social work. Whereas psychology is focused just on, you know, the mind and how that works. So that's my understanding of the difference between the two, and psychologists have to get their PhD to be considered psychologists, right? And from what I've seen is psychologists usually are the ones that do the assessments, like what's going on and try to do a formulation from that. But as social workers become more versed, or what else it is respected, is that we are also qualified to do assessments as well. So yeah.
I find that with not therapists, psychologists, they tend to open and close a lot of doors. It's more mental than anything. Because I've had my experience, you know, like just going over like, you know, my stuff before the interview and so forth to kind of understand the functionalities of what you do. It brought me back to a time. Like I believe that everybody sometimes needs to go and speak to somebody. Right? And what happens is you get that layer effect, right? You don't speak to somebody, it builds up and then you break. Like when it happened to me, I wish you were around in those times. I could have probably spoken to you and I could have avoided a lot.
Maybe by then I wasn't qualified, so I probably would have just made it worse.
But yeah, so when I had my little situation, I had what they called, and I'm not scared to speak about it on camera or anything. Viewers, you know, you're not alone. We all go through things in life. You know what I mean? If you have an issue, speak about it, because that's the only one. This is the only way that you're gonna get help, right? You know, Jamaica have a saying, "When beg no want to get," right? So yeah, it is what it is. So I was diagnosed at the time with depression/adjustment disorder, and it was very, very, very hard for me because I couldn't really speak to anybody about it. Normally, a person that's upbeat and full of energy, and then people are calling you and they're like, "Hey, what's going on? Oh, you don't look like yourself." I remember once I went to the therapist actually, and he goes, "Luan, if I were to go to your house right now, what would it look like?" And I was like, "You wouldn't be able to open the door." And after he's like, "Okay." And I go, "What's the next question?" He's like, "No, there's no other questions." I'm like, "What was that question for?" Because I like psychology myself, so I'm like, what does that mean? It's like basically that's a reflection of your mind. Your mind is a mess right now. So like, when it comes to people that want to seek help but they don't necessarily have the financial means to go about it, is there any programs for people that may not be able to afford? Is there something that's covered by?
There's definitely programs, but one of the challenge is because there are so little programs, the wait lists are long, and it makes it even more discouraging. You know, unfortunately, with the government not seeing or placing a high value on social welfare, it impacts.
And that kind of runs parallel to a lot I see going on in Toronto right now. Through our CP24, there's a lot of gun crimes. There's a lot of things involving the youth. You know, I would say jump up and say, "Hey, you know what? They need more resource centers. They need more after-school programs." What do you think? If you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, what would you say like the major issues that the government or the city has to step up and do to kind of help in the sense if you're a parent and you have children, parenting is obviously the first thing that people would look into to say, okay, your kid is a certain way because you're not parenting the right way. What would you say if a parent may not have the financial means? What program or how would you direct them, or would they be able to come and see you, or?
So they would be able to come and see me, but I work with kids who are one step before entering residential, so they might need a little bit more support than the average Joe.
And when you say residential?
So residential is like group homes.
Oh, okay.
So they're one step from being, either kicked out the house, for not going to school. Like they're not crown wards, so crown wards are people who are already within the society.
Right.
They're not in the society, the ones I work with. Right. They're the ones that, one step from being in society. And because resources are, again, limited for even the society, they're trying to roll out programs to help mitigate that. But there's not enough of our program. So my program is we go into the homes and we provide support. So we become like, the extension of the family. And we go in and we provide coaching, counseling, support, whatever the presenting need may be. And then we move forward with that, paired with a child and youth worker. So what I do is I do the talking piece and the child and youth worker does the doing piece. Right. Like, so let's say they have problems with schools and they're not trying to go to school, school avoidance. We try to develop strategies that would be supportive, and then the child and youth worker would accompany them to going to school so that they're actually doing that piece.
Right.
So the execution part is a huge thing, a huge barrier for a lot of people, because everyone knows what to do, but to do it is the hard part.
I think the hardest part is to start, just to get the ball rolling. It's just like with anything. If somebody wants to go to the gym, and
I was just thinking that in my head, the gym.
Exactly. If somebody wants to live a healthier life and they want to go to the gym, you have to understand the first part in going to the gym is actually going to the gym.
Yeah.
You can buy all the track suits you want, you can buy all the fancy water balls you want, but unless you make that first step and actually go,
I laugh because that's my struggle.
Well, you know what? We all have struggles, right? And it's good to that you're open with us when it comes to that, because I personally believe with mental health and just to kind of bridge the gap. I think physical health has a lot to do with it, because it is mind, body, and soul. And it wasn't until I got into my situation where I got to really understand that it is really literally mind, body, and soul. And with it being so dark out at night,
I know it doesn't help.
It doesn't help.
It doesn't help at all. Yeah. During winter, people will see they'll experience lower moods for sure, because vitamin D is not as high, which helps with energy regeneration and that sort of thing. So winter blues is a thing.
Is it?
Yeah.
And I find it's like, I always like to make this comparison when it comes to like the winter blues.
Yeah.
I always do that whole squirrel simulation, like when in the summertime and in spring and in fall. The squirrels out there digging a big hole, burying as much nuts as possible. We're watching the squirrels like, what are you guys actually doing? It's like, no, they're getting ready for this cold time.
Yeah.
Same thing with winter time. If you don't get enough sun or you have enough physical activity while the sun is out, once the sun goes away, when it comes to January, February, March, I label it as the 3 hardest months out of the year.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are just bouncing back from the Christmas holidays, bouncing back from financial issues, because when jolly old Saint Nick comes to town, it has a very, very, very strong and hard impact on a lot of people. When it comes to suicide and suicide rates with youth today, do you think it's getting worse, or it's actually improving with the help of like social media and stuff like that, like the kids helpline and outlets for them to reach to? Do you think it's easier, like a lot of kids are getting more help now, that it's easier to set their fingertips, or do you think with the whole dopamine situation and depression that it's actually getting worse?
I think there's just more awareness towards it, which helps, right? Because basically, not to reduce suicide, but what a large part of suicide is wanting whatever pain to stop. So people don't necessarily want to die, they want the pain to die that they're feeling or experiencing, and they feel that suicide is the only way to get there. In terms of the rates, I wouldn't know, just because I haven't done research to say what it is now, so I don't want to give wrongful information, but from my experience, I haven't experienced a lot of suicidal ideations with my clientele, and I work with kids who do need a lot of support. I think it's those one-offs, but I will say that I'm glad that there's awareness out there and that people are becoming more equipped to deal with it too. In terms of like people in my line of work, we're becoming much more equipped to deal with it more effectively. So maybe that's why I don't experience a lot of that.
So like in terms of like medication and stuff like that, like the doctor will always, like, when I was going through my situation, I had like a bunch of different pills to take. One for, you know, in the middle of the day, one before you go to bed at night. Do you encourage the more natural approach to it? Like, I'm pretty sure there's different things you could do. Like, the halfway through it, the medication was really messing me up.
Right.
Really, really messing me up in terms of like sleep time and so forth. So I had to drink different teas.
Yeah.
Would you find that? Do you find that the natural ways is much better, or do you think that the medication is actually good regardless of what people say? That the medication doesn't exactly fix the problem; it's actually like a band-aid.
I do think that medication in general, it is a band-aid. Medication doesn't cure. It kind of, for the most part, I feel like it does. It deals with the symptoms that you're experiencing. In terms of medication, I've seen it work wonders for a lot of people. I think it depends on how much your diagnosis is impeding your life. Because sometimes it is an actual chemical imbalance. Right. So I think if the chemical imbalance is really high, medication can be very helpful paired with counseling, because medication deals with the symptoms and counseling deals with coping when the symptoms are maybe too much, that you don't necessarily want to increase the dosage that you're intaking in your body, because of course, like, medication deals with one problem and creates another. Right. So that's my understanding of what medication is. I'm not a doctor, but from what I know, it's kind of like one of those things, like it cures something and creates something else. Like when they say, take this medication if you want to feel better, it might cause nausea. Like
a whole 5-minute spiel on all the negative effects of it.
Yeah, so like, you know, it's bittersweet. Again, because I'm not a pharmacist or any of that stuff, I can't speak to it, but in my heart I will always try to give people options for them to see, as opposed to just say medication. Because there's more than one option for sure. And unfortunately, not a lot of people give people options to decide, because once you have informed information, then you can make an educated decision, right? But sometimes they're like, yeah, so this is what's happening? Medication. And it's like, could be this, it could be this, you can try this, you can try tea, you can try, you know, different things and see if that helps. So
I think Chinese root tea is what I drank. And there's another one that I drank, and chamomile was really good as well too. Really puts me to sleep. You know, versus taking all the medication, right? Something else I was going to ask you, in terms of support, support systems are always good. It's not everybody that has a support system. I know that being around family could be a pro and a con when they're going through certain things. Certain families can be very supportive and be like, okay, you're not feeling too well, you're down, you have a mental issue, come around and, you know, we can help, or family will come and visit you. And then you got that family that's like, you know what, we don't really believe in that mental issue stuff.
You're fine.
You're fine, or you're just dunce, or you're just not picking up your book. But it could be like underlining issues. Like, how do you find, like, within our community? Because I know, like, when I was a kid growing up, I had ADD. You know what I mean? I was dyslexic as well too. So it wasn't that you don't go pick up your book. It's J's turning into G, and their letters are turning into cartoons. Nobody's really believing you. How do you think it is? Exactly, because you're a child. Like nowadays, do you find that parents are more, you know, responsive to if their kid says that?
I think so. I think as awareness grows, understanding grows, and then more efficient or effective solutions can be administered, because without understanding, you really can't deal with something appropriately if you don't understand it, right? So part of what I do in counseling is psychoeducation. So educating the parents about what's going on with your child, because they feel that they just need to do this, but it's like, not at all. That's not. Save yourself some work and focus on this aspect.
You know what's weird? Sometimes I feel that a lot of parents that come in and they don't want to actually work with the kids, I find that some of the parents actually have mental issues themselves, or actually in need of a therapist.
There you go.
Have you ever come into a situation where you have to speak to a parent about their child's behavior and then realize that this could be actually something that was actually handed down to the child through genetics?
Yeah. So that's a real thing. So mental health can be passed down in the sense where the child has a higher likelihood of developing that same mental health concern. So not to say that if someone has bipolar, their child automatically is going to have bipolar, but there's a higher likelihood that they're going to experience that. They could experience that or some form of that. So it's a real thing.
How do you convey that message to the parent though, without them feeling offended?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it always comes down to the relationship I have with the parents. So one of the first things I do in my sessions is make sure that they feel comfortable with me. That's the only way any change can happen.
Right.
Is because think about it. Who do you talk to? Your best friend or someone you don't like? Right? So I'm not trying to be their best friend, but I am trying to create a relationship where they feel comfortable, not judged, a safe space so that they can tell me their unfiltered truth without trying to sound like I'm this and that. But you know, we're always, for the most part, in our heads, right? So as much as I try, sometimes some parents feel like they need to continue to present a certain way. But I think with anything, it's just gently inserting information, planting seeds. At the end of the day, that's all I can do, is plant those seeds, and it's really up to them if they want to water it. I'm giving you this information. What you do with it's completely up to you, but this is the information that's out there, and this is some ways that you can deal with the situation. But I can't force, what do they say? You can't bring a horse to the water or something.
Yeah, you can bring a horse to the water, but you can't force it to drink.
Exactly. Like, could you imagine, like, I walk up to a parent, like, drink!
Drink
the information that I'm telling you. Like, it's not a good picture, it's not a great feeling anyway, so it's just really providing comfort, and a lot of people just want to feel heard and understood, because a lot of things that happen in the family dynamic is no one's listening to me. I'm trying to explain something, no one's listening to me. No matter how I try to relay the information, if I yell, I curse, I push, I become verbally aggressive, no one's still not listening to me, right? So I think a lot of what I do is just getting people to see things from another perspective. So a lot of it is empathy building, for sure, like putting people in the other person that they're having a hard time with, just for them to understand, like, what are some things that they could be going through at this time, and what do you think makes them think this way? And then also creating like parallels, like, okay, so does that sound familiar? You know, see if they can make that connection without me saying, well, your child is doing this because you do this, and they're doing age appropriately.
So it could be a really sensitive
it's very sensitive, and but the great thing about it is I, not to say I have the ability to read people, but you kind of pick up on body language, and when you have that relationship, you can see when the demeanor changes too, right? Although my job is to gently push people beyond their comfort zone so that they can see growth, you also don't want to offend. Right? You still want to make sure that the information you're providing them with, it's landing. Because it doesn't make sense, I'm constantly telling you this, and it's going right over your head. Right? So it's really, it comes down to the relationship, because then I understand you more. So then I can relay information in a way that you understand, as opposed to be, according to my research, like, most people don't respond to that. Most people don't.
Exactly.
Yeah, most people don't speak that way. So it's really interesting sometimes when I hear therapists and they're speaking very intelligently, but I'm just like, I wonder how that lands for your clientele. Especially because some of the clientele that I work with are not affluent and not, you know, have a huge vocabulary, right? And I've always said, like, because I've been blessed enough to work with as young as 2.5 to as old as 65, simple communication is key, because you never know where someone is developmentally. So you can look the way you look, mature and everything else, but maybe your processing is not the same, right?
I guess that's why they say age nothing but a number.
Right, so it's like, if I communicate something in a simple form, you'll understand A plus B equals C. Okay, cool.
So for those people, for those people who don't have that family support or that family backative that they can go and speak to, you know, there's kids helpline for teenagers, you know, adolescents, well, for kids and teens. What avenue do adults like you and I would have? Like, let's just say I have a reoccurring issue and I need to speak to somebody. Aside from the people that I have in my circle and my team now, I can always speak to them. But let's just say I was just somewhere else and I didn't have no family around me. I find that strangers, first and foremost, I find that they're actually the best people to speak to. Not to say like a stranger that you've never met, but like, you know, you can kind of shoot with somebody on the subway or at a coffee shop and stuff like that. Do you find that if you don't have the family support, that like a stranger is the next best thing, or what would you say would be the next avenue, like how teenagers would have the kids helpline? What would you refer to, like an adult that doesn't have, necessarily the money to go and see a therapist, or if they go and see somebody through the government or through the city, it's kind of limited the help that they kind of get, right? Because after the session's done and they kind of say kuna matata, go about your ways, you don't know what they're up to that night, I think, right? So is there a number or a line that they can call, or?
There is helplines, but at the end of the day, 211.ca is like a directory for community services across the GTA, Canada, across the board. So if I'm ever stumped, I kind of just look up on it's like a Google.
Oh, okay.
It's Google for community services.
Oh, okay.
So 211.ca, and you kind of look it up, and it gives you information that can be ethnicity specific too, which is a big thing, especially if there's like language barriers and you're not too sure about that stuff, because that's a big thing, right? You can call the English speaking helplines, but if you don't speak English, then that's another added layer, right?
You seem very comfortable in what, I don't mean to cut you.
Yeah.
Continue. No, it's okay. You seem very comfortable with what you do, and I admire that, because I believe that if you're going to do anything in life, you actually have to do something that you enjoy doing, because it'll become easier. When did you know that therapy was that avenue that you're going to go down?
You know, it's funny. I didn't know I was going to end up here. I actually thought, like, I was one of those kids that was misunderstood. I was definitely the ones, can you believe I was in anger management? Like, which part of me is angry? Like, I was in anger management. I was causing my mom a lot of grief, and especially in my teen years, I was that kid that just wanted to explore life on their terms. Poor mom didn't understand that. We speak about it now, and she laughs and chuckles and whatever else when I talk about my childhood trauma, but you know, it's all good. But like, I never thought I can get here. Like, I had the same doubts that a lot of my young people experience, and so that's why, like, even just, you know, a couple days ago, one of my youth said, I don't know if I can ever be a psychologist. I was like, listen, buddy, let me tell you about this. That is not the case, because I never thought I'd end up where I am today, right? Like, I hate school and I have my master's. I don't know how those things coincide, but I definitely don't like school. But what I've come to learn about myself is I enjoy learning. So I enjoy doing my own thing, like even with my private practice, learning and figuring out the business aspect and talking to other people and getting information and researching. Like, I can do all of that stuff, which are pretty much the same principles in school. But when it became to that standardized way of learning, I was like, nah, I don't like it. But when it's for me, I'm like, yeah, I can do this all day, every day, right? So it's really just finding what you enjoy. I don't know if I would say it's your passion, because sometimes not everything that you're passionate about, you can do it for a living, right? But this is something I definitely enjoy, and I kind of fell into it. So I did... I think I just had, my mom was big on putting me in everything. She exposed me to a lot of things. I did cadets, I did brownies, I did a whole bunch of stuff. And because it was so different from, I guess, a lot of people, I was exposed to a lot of different people that, you know, took me outside. Like, with cadets, it's definitely multicultural. You're going to meet other people from other squadrons. So I met like a lot of people in Canada, and like just doing a lot of different things, because like I think one of our biggest thing, and kind of going back to what you were saying about like the Jane and Finch area and the need more after school programs, is getting outside of Jane and Finch. Because when you're in a bubble, you literally think you don't know what you don't know. Right? So when you're still in that bubble, you think like, okay, so this is life, so I gotta figure out how to do this. But when you go outside of it and you're like, oh, so there's more to life. Oh, you could do that. Oh, like even down to this radio show, you're showcasing a lot of different individuals who are from the African and Caribbean population that are doing different things, right? Things that people wouldn't normally see or think about, right? So I think going outside of that opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I'm like, okay, maybe I can do this. And during my journey of meeting a lot of awesome people who kept like pouring into me, like, Tamara, you could do this. Tamara, you can so do this. You can do this and also do this. And just like planting those seeds. And because it happened so much, I kind of like, okay, maybe I can kind of do this, right? Because sometimes your support doesn't come from your family. It comes outside of your family, right? But if you position yourself, or if you're blessed enough to get those people that can pour into you in a positive way, then you start to see your world a little bit differently.
And I agree with that 120%. We're all born with relatives, but it's us that actually compose and make our actual family.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's I guess it cuts both ways to say.
Yeah. So in that sense, because I initially just wanted to work with children and youth, no one else. I don't want to work with adults. I don't want to work with babies, just children and adolescents. And then I worked at a daycare, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna kill my firstborn. Da, 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 da. And then I worked with younger kids, and I'm like, hey, I can do this. Okay, let's go. Like animation, you are my sunshine. Like it was so different.
You understand where I'm coming from when I say you're natural. Like you're good at what you do. I've never sat in the office with you, but I could just feel that you're good for the role, and it actually makes me feel really, really good.
Good.
You know, I'm looking like a mirror effect. Yeah, you're female, I'm a male, but looking at another, a sister.
All right.
So makes me feel good. It isn't every sister you're gonna see twerking and popping their thing. So we got professionals. You know what I'm saying?
Of course. I mean, every now and then you want to do the thing and But I'm just saying, there's a time and place, and that's one of the messages I send to a lot of young people, because they feel like they always have to be like this in order to be successful, right? And that's not the case. You just need to know when.
Well, a lot of kids are rushed into it. The way I look at it as a young black male, I find that black men grow up, out of all the races, grow up the fastest.
Yeah.
By 20, they gotta get it.
Yeah, gotta figure it out.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, rest in peace, Pop Smoke.
Yeah.
A famous rapper that passed away. I believe it was a day or two ago. 20 years old, just about to lift off, and he just got that pressure, to make it. I'm thinking about those people that came in and took his life.
Yeah.
Why did they have to do that?
Yeah.
When you look at people within that age group, it's like they gotta get their mom a house, they gotta get their dad a car, they gotta do this and they gotta do that, because the previous generation, not to say they didn't handle their business or didn't do it right, they probably sacrificed their life to actually let them get somewhere. So it's unfortunate, and a lot of young people are dying of suicide.
Yeah.
And a lot of scary things, you know what I mean?
There's a lot of scary things, but I think at the end of the day, it comes back to your support system. But also, one of the great things about being first generation is my mom did the survival piece, right? She did what she needed to do to survive and lay that foundation for me. Now it's up to me to take our family one step further. And then my kids to take our family one step further, because they say it takes 7 generations to get over trauma, right? So if you really think about it, when did Black Panther Party dismantle? It was just in the 70s, right? So it's only been, what, 3 decades?
They didn't even get a good run at it.
Exactly. So it's like now we're just starting to figure some stuff out, right? So we're laying that foundation, right? So as much as they want to say slavery was so long ago, was it really that long ago?
No.
Like the other manifestations of slavery? Like, yes, we weren't in chains, but we were basically still in chains, right?
Mental slavery, right?
Exactly. So
I think
now,
your uncle said it best, Bob Marley: "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Only you can free your mind."
Right. Okay. So that's why I say knowledge is power.
Exactly.
Right. So it circles back around, because when you know better, you do better.
Right.
So quote that.
No, but we have to do those things.
It's a real thing.
We have to do those things because those rappers and musicians they're all poets.
Yeah.
And they're basically laying down a certain script or a blueprint for us to follow. It's for us to follow it or not. It's like even within your role as a therapist, like with the couples thing. Do you think bun for bun is an effective way to get back at people? What do you think in the bun for bun situation?
Yeah, in relationships, like eye for an eye makes everyone blind. Right, so that's what that's what I think of when they're like, well, he did this to me and I did this to you. I'm like, so when does it stop? How do you want to move forward? Do you want to continue moving forward, hopping and lipping, chopping off foot, chopping off hands because he did this and I did that and blah blah blah, or do you want to move forward? And if you want to move forward, what does that look like, with him or without him, right? And I don't know why I'm saying him, because not only male get bun, but
that's just an example of society. That's an example of society. Normally it's the guy that's doing it, right?
Right, and that's part of the narrative that we have to change too. Like a lot of our black men are growing up without sound role models, right? And one of the things that hurts my heart dearly is that some of our black men are growing up and then doing the same thing. But because I know what I know about people repeating what they know, that's how that happens, right? But it's really unfortunate, because you knew what it felt like to grow up without your dad, and now you're doing it to another child. Regardless, but
it's okay.
Some females don't make it very easy, right? So it's like,
and I think
I know a lot of stuff, so I just don't say anything.
A lot of people need to hear that, because a lot of people think it's always the male that's going and stepping out. When it comes to the whole cheating thing or whatever, I find that women do it.
Yeah, they do
more effectively than men. We're dogs. We just walk away and but women, they're cats. They cover it up. Right. How much of those couples do you see, like within?
So I work more so with families, so they're cohesive.
Right.
But what I will say is, like, you know, sometimes when you're dealing with co-parenting can be challenging within itself. Parenting within itself is challenging. So it's like there's always different dynamics, and I don't want to lump any specific group together. Right. But I just know it's challenging. So it's really like you need to deal with your stuff so that you can deal with it when it comes up for your child, right? Because if you haven't dealt with it, how are you going to walk your child through those moments if you haven't dealt with it? And a lot of parents will say, I haven't dealt with that. And when I ask them, how have you been, you know, helping them through certain things, they flat out say that. They say exactly that. Well, I don't know. I've never tried, or I should, but I can't, or stuff like that. So I'm lucky that they're able to own that. But again, knowing the issue and then doing something about the issue are totally different things, right? The execution piece is hard.
You got to learn to earn, right?
Something so.
So listen, when you're going through your downtime and you're in, I don't want to say dark place because you know black is beauty.
Thank you.
When you're,
thank you. Sorry.
But you know, the society in a dark place. Who do you go to? Like, who do you run to?
That's a great question. I think like I drive home in silence. Just because I need to decompress and kind of take a moment.
And I like how you said that, decompress. And the reason why I say I like that, decompress, is because all depending on the work that you do and the environment that you're in, Monday to Friday, typically, you're compressed. From Friday to like Sunday morning, afternoon, we kind of decompress. So it's like, I'm glad that you say that, because a lot of people have to understand, there's compression and there's decompression. A lot of people don't even factor that into their life.
So one thing that has been helping me is, like, you know, I drive home in silence, or if I have to take the bus because I'm mobile, I kind of just have a moment of just like silence, quietness, so that I can just like breathe and not have to be thinking and on and putting things together, seeing patterns, creating, like, it's constantly like this. This is how my brain is working all the time. So it's like when I'm leaving, wherever it is, work is, it's just I want to be like this. I don't want to move, I don't want to talk, I don't want to blink, I don't want to do this.
So with that being said, how much hours do you recommend your average adult or child must get just to do the whole mind, body, and soul type thing? You have to rest up from the compression. What would you say is a good average?
That's a great question. I think it depends on each person, because of my temperament, certain things don't land and stick on me for a long period of time. Like, I'm not someone that holds on to things. Some personalities, some therapists have a hard time decompressing because they take things on too much. So you have to have, like, it comes down to boundaries, right? What you allow in and what you don't allow in. So I think it comes down to the personality. Some people may need much more than me. So it's really hard to say what's a good average, because everybody's different, and it depends on the day, it depends on the week. There's a lot of things to factor in. So
6 to 8 hours, you say?
I would say probably like at least an hour a day, ideally. Hour a day would be great, but if you can't, any moment, like if it's 10 minutes, it's still 10 minutes of not thinking in that way. So you start small and then you snowball into something bigger, and you figure out what's working for you, right? So again, it's just learning about yourself, what works for you.
I wish I had a little bit more time. Before we wrap it up for today, do you have Instagram, a Facebook, or a Twitter? The viewers at home could,
yes, I do. You can find me at h.associates for my Instagram, and Henningham and Associates for Facebook, and my website is hnapractice.com. So it's the letter H, the letter N, the letter A, so Henningham and Associates. Practice. P-R-A-C, can I spell practice? TICE.com.
Alright. It was a pleasure having you again. So very much, okay?
Alright.
And ladies and gentlemen, you have another installment of The Wave Show with the beautiful Tamara. That's that for today, and thank you for watching. That's great. Come to the Wave Show. Time a big Willie. Come to the Wave Show. You think you got flows? Come to the Wave Show. You think you got jokes? Come to the Wave Show. You got a message for the